The ballroom was thick with scent, warm amber mixed with fear, rich perfume failing to hide the sharp edge of desperation clinging to every unmated wolf inside. Crystal chandeliers hung above us, scattering light across the marble floor in broken patterns that shifted like restless shadows. My heart matched that movement, beating too fast, too loud. I stayed pressed to the far wall, my pale blonde hair tied back in a simple braid that suddenly felt painfully plain as elegant she-wolves passed me, their hair pinned high and glittering with jewels that flashed like stars. This gathering wasn't just a celebration, everyone knew that, it was a hunt of a different kind. Packs from all across the northern lands had come to trade glances, promises, and futures. Bonds would be formed here, romantic or political, sometimes both. My father had made sure I attended. That morning, his rough hands had held my shoulders a little too tightly, his voice heavy with hope and fear. "You're 23, Celia," he'd said. "The pack needs this, we need this." What he truly meant was that Pinewood, small, overlooked, and barely remembered, needed me to matter. I exhaled slowly and watched the room instead. That was when I saw him. Dominic Ashford moved through the crowd like a storm wrapped in human skin. Conversations bent around him. Wolves straightened without realizing why. He was tall, so tall people had to lift their chins to meet his gaze, and his dark hair looked like he never bothered to tame it, as if control came easily everywhere else. But it wasn't his looks that unsettled me. It was the weight of him. His power rolled outward in invisible waves, crushing and magnetic at the same time. My wolf whimpered inside my chest, torn between dropping to her knees and stepping closer. He was speaking to she-wolves. Interviewing them, Sarah had whispered earlier, barely hiding her excitement. The Alpha King, 28 and still unmated, was actually considering matches. Since then, the room had buzzed like a shaken hive. Celia Thorne. I flinched at my name and turned to see Counselor Brennan watching me with sharp, assessing eyes. Several officials stood behind him, their expressions tight and unreadable. "The Alpha King has asked that you join the receiving line," Brennan said. His tone left no space for refusal. My stomach dropped. "I think there's been a mistake." "There hasn't," he replied coolly. "Come." Crossing the ballroom felt like walking through fire. Eyes followed me. Whispers chased my steps. "Who is she?" "Pinewood, Gregory Thorne's daughter, the girl whose mother died in childbirth. The quiet one who read too much and never learned how to shine." 7 she-wolves stood in the receiving line, flawless and poised. I joined them at the end, lifting my chin and setting my shoulders the way I'd been taught, though I felt like a child pretending to belong among queens. Dominic moved down the line with calm precision. I couldn't hear his questions, only saw the practiced smiles, the soft laughter, the carefully measured confidence. 2 minutes each, no more. With every step closer to me, his expression darkened. Then he stopped in front of me. Up close, the danger in him was unmistakable. His amber eyes glowed under the chandelier light, sharp and alive, and when they met mine, the effect was instant. Heat, fear, awareness. It felt like being touched without skin ever meeting skin. "Named," he said. "Celia Thorne, Your Majesty." My voice surprised me by not shaking. "Pinewood Pack." "Not a question. Yes, Eastern Border, small territory." His gaze sharpened. "Your father is Gregory Thorne." "Yes, Your Majesty." Something crossed his face, interest, maybe irritation, but it vanished too quickly to be sure. "You're young," he said. 23. I hesitated, then lifted my chin a fraction more. "The same age your mother was when she became queen." Silence crashed down around us. Every breath in the room seemed to stop. Even my wolf froze, caught between terror and a strange flicker of pride. His eyes narrowed. For a heartbeat, I expected anger. Instead, one corner of his mouth twitched. "You've studied royal history." "I study all history," I said quietly. "It helps to know where we came from if we want to understand where we're going." He tilted his head, watching me like a puzzle he hadn't planned to solve. "Interesting. Then, without warning, do you have a boyfriend?" The question hit harder than any formal challenge. Whispers surged around us, sharp and eager. He hadn't asked anyone else that. "Not yet, Your Majesty," I said honestly. The words barely left my mouth before I realized how they sounded. Not yet, as if I were waiting, as if someone else already stood in his shadow. Dominic stiffened. Power snapped through the air like a struck wire. His suit stretched over tense muscle, and his eyes darkened, amber swirling with something fierce and possessive. The room seemed to shrink, pressure closing in on my lungs. "Not yet," he repeated, his voice dropping low, dangerously low. "So you're considering someone?" It wasn't a question. "I know." "That's not," the words tangled on my tongue as I spoke, my focus slipping the closer he felt. He hadn't taken a single step toward me, yet somehow his presence had grown heavier, thicker, until it wrapped around me and pushed everything else away. The music, the voices, the ballroom itself faded into the background. All I could feel was him. "I just meant I'm not involved with anyone right now," I said quickly. "But someday, isn't that why we're all here?" The moment the sentence ended, dread slammed into me. Wrong. So horribly wrong, Dominic's jaw tightened, a sharp muscle jumping beneath his skin. The air shifted. Around us, curiosity turned into full attention. Wolves leaned closer, pretending not to stare while staring anyway. I caught sight of Counselor Brennan watching us, his posture tense like a man deciding whether disaster was close enough to touch. "Who is he?" Dominic asked. This time there was no charm in his voice, no patience, it was an order. "There is no one," I said. "Don't lie to me." He leaned in close enough that my breath caught. I smelled him then, cedar, cold air, the promise of a storm rolling in fast. His breath brushed the loose strands of hair near my cheek. "Your heart is racing," he said quietly. "You're nervous." "That smells like guilt." "I'm nervous because you're terrifying," I snapped, shockingly loud in my own ears. Fear cracked and something reckless spilled out. "And I'm not lying, there's no boyfriend, no secret mail, no one waiting for me." The truth rushed free before I could stop it. "I'm the odd girl from a dying pack. I spend my time buried in old records instead of flirting at gatherings. Trust me, Your Majesty, men are not lining up for me." The bitterness in my voice stung more than I expected. Something shifted in Dominic's expression. Surprise, maybe. Or recognition. His anger didn't vanish, but it loosened just slightly. He straightened, the pressure easing enough for me to breathe again. Still, his eyes stayed locked on mine, burning with something raw and unsettled, hunger mixed with pain and danger. "You'll sit at my table tonight," he said suddenly. "At my right?" Before I could react, before I could even understand what that meant, he turned and walked away. Silence followed him, thick and stunned, before breaking into frantic whispers. Sarah appeared beside me almost instantly, gripping my arm hard. "Celia," she hissed, barely containing herself. "Do you understand what just happened? He claimed you, that seat, I know what it means," I cut in weakly. My legs trembled and I clutched her arm like a lifeline. "This is a mistake," I whispered. "He's wrong." But even as I said it, his presence lingered, cedar. Storms, that low, possessive edge in his voice when he'd asked if I belonged to someone. I knew with a sudden, chilling clarity that something had been set in motion, and it wouldn't stop just because I wished it would. The real fear wasn't the attention. It was whether I would survive what came next. Dinner was torture dressed in silk and silver. I sat stiffly in the chair to Dominic's right, every nerve screaming. The long table overflowed with food, glossy roasted meats, vegetables arranged like art, wines poured into crystal glasses. It all looked beautiful. I couldn't swallow a bite. Every eye in the hall flicked toward me again and again, measuring, judging, wondering. Dominic said nothing. He spoke to others, listened, nodded, but I felt him constantly. Every small movement I made sharpened his awareness. When my fingers shook reaching for water, I felt his attention snap to me like a pulled wire. "You're not eating," he murmured. "I'm not hungry, Your Majesty." "Dominic," he corrected calmly, slicing his meat without looking at me. "When we speak like this, you'll call me Dominic." My pulse jumped. That wouldn't be appropriate. A faint smile touched his mouth. "Neither are half the thoughts I've had since you said not yet, like you were hiding something." He turned then, and the intensity in his gaze stole the air from my lungs. "I think we passed the line of propriety a while ago." Heat rushed to my face. "I wasn't hiding anything. You told me what you thought you should," he said, leaning closer. That wild scent wrapped around me again, but your scent changed, sharper, not guilt. His voice dropped. "Embarrassment." I froze, "because you were admitting you were alone." He was right, and the truth of it left me helplessly exposed. Around us, the hall buzzed with talk and laughter, silverware chiming against porcelain. None of it reached me. Why does it matter? I asked at last, forcing myself to meet his eyes, fighting the instinct to lower my gaze, to submit. "Why do you care?" Something crossed his face, fast, fierce. "I don't know," he said. The honesty of it stunned me. "But I do," he continued quietly. "And it's making me act like a territorial bastard over a woman I met less than 2 hours ago." Before I could respond, before my heart could slow, Counselor Brennan stood further down the table and tapped his glass. The room gradually fell silent, all attention shifting to him, while beside me the Alpha King sat far too close and everything inside me braced for whatever came next. "Your Majesty," Counselor Brennan began, his voice smooth and official. "If I may, there are several pack matters that require your attention before the night ends. The Morrison pack has requested." "Tomorrow," Dominic interrupted. The single word rolled through the hall with quiet force. Conversations stalled, heads turned. "Your Majesty," Brennan pressed, his jaw tightening, "these issues have been unresolved for weeks. The other alphas are becoming." I said, "Tomorrow, Brennan." There was no warmth left in Dominic's voice now, only command, the kind that didn't invite debate. "Tonight I'm occupied." Brennan's eyes flicked to me. Just for a second, long enough for my stomach to twist. "Calculation, assumption, strategy?" "Of course," he said stiffly. "As you wish, Your Majesty." Slowly, the room returned to life. Voices rose again, but the tone had changed. I could feel it, curiosity sharpening into rumor, curiosity into judgment. My face burned, part shame, part something far more dangerous, coiling low in my chest. "You didn't have to do that," I murmured once the attention drifted away. Dominic finally picked up his fork and began to eat, unbothered, almost lazy. Let them think what they want. Now they think, they always think, he said calmly. At least this way they're entertained. That's easy for you, I snapped under my breath. You're the alpha king, I'm nobody. Tomorrow I go back to being exactly that. His fork paused. You're not going back. The words hit harder than a slap. I what? He set his utensils down and turned fully toward me. In the candlelight, his face looked carved from stone, strong, sharp, ancient, less a king of courts and more a warrior pulled from legend. You heard me, Celia, not tomorrow. Not for a while, panic flared hot and fast. You can't just decide that. I have responsibilities, my father, my pack. Your father will be informed, he said evenly, that you're staying as a guest of the royal court. That sounds a lot like a prison. Anger rushed in, drowning fear. You don't get to kidnap me because I said something that bruised your ego or triggered whatever this is. Jealousy? The word landed clean and blunt. That's what it is, he continued. Irrational, possessive, completely inappropriate. I stared at him, waiting for the twist, the smirk, the game. It never came. If I had a better word, I'd use it, he said grimly. Why? My voice dropped to a whisper. He leaned back slightly, rubbing a hand over his jaw. If I knew that, I wouldn't be making decisions I'll probably regret by sunrise. He took a long drink of wine, then exhaled. But you stood there tonight, pressed against that wall, trying to disappear. And you looked at me like you were seeing something no one else bothered to notice. My chest tightened. You spoke my mother's name without fear, and then you said not yet, like the future was something you owned. His eyes found mine again, sharp and unguarded. And I lost control. The honesty in his voice cracked something open inside me. This wasn't a king playing politics. This was a man unsettled by his own instincts. I can't stay, I said softly. My father needs me. We'll survive a few weeks, he replied. You know that? His hand rested on the table between us, not touching me, but close enough that I felt the heat of him, steady and real. I'm not asking you to abandon them, he said. I'm asking you not to vanish before I understand what this is. Because if you do, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering. The words lingered between us, raw, exposed, dangerous. Around us, dinner continued. Alphas negotiated alliances. Laughter rose and fell, plates were cleared. And I sat beside the most powerful wolf in the realm, caught between fear and courage, knowing with terrifying certainty that whatever path lay ahead, my life had already changed. Brennan cleared his throat, his voice smooth and official. Your Majesty, if I may, there are several pack matters that still require your attention before the evening ends. The Morrison pack has formally requested tomorrow. Dominic's voice cut through the room like a blade. The sudden silence was heavy. Brennan stiffened. With respect, Your Majesty, these issues have been delayed for weeks. The other alphas are becoming restless. I said tomorrow. This time there was no warmth at all, just command, the kind that shut doors and ended arguments without effort. Tonight, I'm otherwise occupied. Brennan's eyes flicked to me for half a second, sharp, measuring. The look made my skin prickle. Of course, Your Majesty, he said at last, as you wish. Conversation slowly returned, but the mood had changed. I could feel it, whispers forming, glances sliding our way. Everyone was guessing. Everyone was deciding what kind of distraction the Alpha King had chosen for himself. My cheeks burned with embarrassment and something far more dangerous. You didn't have to do that, I murmured once the attention drifted elsewhere. Dominic finally picked up his fork, calm and unbothered, as if he hadn't just shut down his entire court for my sake. Let them think whatever they want. That's easy for you to say, I muttered. You're the Alpha King, I'm nobody. Tomorrow I go back to being exactly that. He stopped eating. Slowly, deliberately, he turned toward me. In the soft glow of candlelight, his face looked carved from stone, hard, striking, almost ancient. A warrior king, not a man meant for comfort. You're not going back to Pinewood tomorrow, he said, my chest tightened. You can't just, I have responsibilities, your father will be informed that you are staying as a guest of the royal court. His tone allowed no room for debate. It will be presented as an honor, a chance to strengthen your pack's connection to the crown. A prison, I snapped, fear turning sharp and angry. You can't trap me here because I said something that hurt your ego or triggered your whatever this is, jealousy. The word landed flat, honest, unapologetic. That's the word you're looking for, he continued. It's irrational, possessive, completely inappropriate considering we barely know each other, but it's real. I stared at him, waiting for the mask to slip, waiting for arrogance, manipulation. It didn't come. Instead, he looked almost unsettled. Why? I whispered. He exhaled slowly, lifting his wine glass and draining it. If I understood that, I wouldn't be making decisions I'll probably regret tomorrow. But something about you, standing there against the wall, trying to disappear. The way you looked at me like you were seeing something no one else does, the way you spoke about my mother, and then that not yet, his jaw tightened. I lost control. The raw truth of it shook me more than any threat could have. I can't stay, I said, but my voice was weaker now. My pack needs me. They'll survive a few weeks. His hand rested on the table between us, not touching me, but close enough that I felt his warmth. I'm not asking you to abandon them. I'm asking for time to understand what this is before you vanish back to the edge of the world and leave me wondering for the rest of my life. The words hurt in a quiet way, honest, exposed. Around us the feast continued, alphas bargaining, she-wolves positioning themselves. Power moving like a current through the room, but in that moment it felt like only the two of us existed. And if I refuse, I asked, then you walk away, he said, and I let you go. And I become even more unbearable than usual because I'll be haunted by what could have been. He looked away then, jaw clenched. I won't force you, Celia. I don't kidnap women just because they intrigue me, but I am asking for a chance. I should have said no. Every sensible part of me screamed to run, to return to Pinewood, to forget this night and this man and the dangerous pull between us. But beneath the fear was something wild, reckless, hopeful. 2 weeks, I said before I could stop myself. I'll stay for 2 weeks. If this still doesn't make sense by then, I leave. No arguments, no orders, no pressure. The tension drained from his shoulders like a storm breaking. His smile was small, real, almost soft. Deal, 2 weeks. 2 weeks to understand why a harmless question about boyfriends had flipped something feral inside him, why the idea of another man looking at me twice made him sound like he wanted to rip throats out. I should have been afraid of that kind of possessiveness. Instead, it sent a sharp rush through me, one I stubbornly refused to analyze. The rest of the dinner blurred together. Dominic introduced me to pack leaders one by one, his presence solid at my side. Now and then his hand brushed the small of my back, light enough to look accidental, deliberate enough to feel like a promise. Every touch burned. Every time he shifted closer, my body reacted before my mind could catch up. And when his amber eyes met mine across the table, my breath hitched like I'd been caught doing something dangerous. By the time the last plates were cleared and guests drifted toward the ballroom, my nerves were stretched tight. Sarah found my gaze across the room, her smile uncertain, caught between excitement for me and worry about the storm she could sense building. Walk with me, Dominic said quietly as the crowd thinned. It wasn't a request, but it wasn't an order either. I nodded, letting him guide me away from the noise and music, through hallways that grew quieter with every turn. The palace felt endless, stone walls, hanging tapestries, shadows soaked with history. I tried to memorize everything, corners, doors, staircases. Anything that might help me find my way in this place I'd somehow agreed to call home for the next 2 weeks. We climbed a broad staircase and the realization hit me we were alone. No guards, no servants, no witnesses. My heart pounded, torn between excitement and fear. This wing is reserved for the royal family and high-ranking guests, Dominic said as we passed a row of dark wooden doors carved with ancient symbols. You'll have privacy here. Safety? Safety from what? I asked. He stopped and turned to face me. Something in his expression tightened my chest. From wolves who will see you as a threat, from those who will try to use your sudden position for their own gain, from court politics that can destroy someone in days if they aren't ready. He hesitated, then added more quietly, and from me when you need it. The words settled heavily between us. What if I don't want safety from you? The question slipped out before I could stop it, reckless, honest, raw. His eyes darkened, and for one breathless moment I thought he might step closer. Instead, he deliberately moved back, the space he created feeling like a wound. Then you're far more dangerous than I thought, he said roughly, and I'm already in deeper trouble than I realized. Then he turned and walked away, leaving me alone in the corridor with my pulse racing and the sinking certainty that I'd just stepped onto a path with no safe way back. The next 3 days passed in a strange mix of routine and chaos. Each morning began with Alina, a middle-aged she-wolf assigned as my attendant. She brought breakfast and clothes finer than anything I'd ever owned in Pinewood. She didn't talk much, but her calm efficiency grounded me. I ate by the window, watching sunlight spill across the palace grounds, trying to reconcile the girl I had been with the woman I felt myself becoming. Dominic was everywhere and nowhere. I caught glimpses of him in corridors, surrounded by advisors, his face hard and distant as he ruled. Sometimes our eyes met across courtyards or through open doors, and the intensity in his gaze stole my breath. But he never came to me, never spoke to me, as if the moment in the hallway had made him retreat. It was driving me mad. On the 4th morning, raised voices outside my door jolted me awake. Absolutely unacceptable. The Alpha King cannot just place some nobody in the royal wing without— Watch your tone, counselor. I recognized Jackson immediately, one of Dominic's personal guards, steady, loyal, unmovable. She's here by the king's order, Jackson continued. That makes her very much somebody. She's a distraction, Brennan snapped. He's missed 3 council meetings, delayed visiting alphas, and yesterday nearly tore Morrison's head off over a simple border question. All because he's obsessing over a girl from a pack so small it barely exists on our maps. Each word struck like a blow. I moved closer to the door, my wolf stirring, angry and alert. Perhaps that says more about what he sees in her than what she is, Jackson replied coolly. Your duty is to the crown, Brennan said darkly, not to encouraging his latest infatuation. She'll leave in a week and a half, they always do. And when she's gone, he'll be left fixing the damage, packs insulted, alliances strained, all for nobody. The handle turned before I could step back. The door opened and I stood face to face with Brennan's rigid expression, Jackson just behind him, both froze. Miss Thorne, Brennan said quickly, masking his surprise with a thin smile. I trust you're finding your accommodations suitable. Perfectly, I replied evenly. Thank you. But I am curious, if you have concerns about my presence, wouldn't it be more appropriate to bring them to the king directly instead of discussing them in the hallway? Something flickered in Brennan's eyes. Indeed. I'm sorry if we disturbed you, Brennan said stiffly. If you'll excuse me. He brushed past me, leaving me alone with Jackson. The guard watched him go, then looked back at me with an expression caught somewhere between concern and quiet amusement. He's not wrong, is he? I asked softly. About me being a distraction. Jackson studied me for a moment, then gave a small, thoughtful smile. The king hasn't been himself since the gathering, but I wouldn't say that's a bad thing. He's more present. Even when he's buried in work, it's like part of him is focused on something worth returning to. He hesitated before adding, he asks about you every day, what you're doing, whether you're comfortable, if you seem unhappy. Warmth spread through my chest at the confession. He hasn't spoken to me in days. Because he's afraid, Jackson said simply. I stared at him. Afraid. I've served Dominic for 6 years. I've seen him face war councils, hostile packs, and death threats without blinking, but whatever you make him feel, he shook his head. That terrifies him. Before I could respond, footsteps echoed down the corridor. My heart jumped as Dominic appeared, walking toward us. He wasn't dressed like a king today, no formal coat, no polished armor, just dark trousers and a fitted shirt that clung to muscle and tension alike. His hair was rumpled, as if he'd been running his hands through it too many times. Jackson, he said, never taking his eyes off me, give us a moment. The guard nodded and disappeared, leaving us alone in the soft wash of morning light. I heard Brennan, Dominic said quietly. I was coming to see you when I caught his scent near your door. His jaw tightened. What he said wasn't wrong. I crossed my arms, suddenly painfully aware that I was still in my nightgown, hair loose and unbrushed. So that's what you think, that you've been avoiding me, skipping duties and causing political damage because of me? He stepped closer. Every instinct inside me screamed, run or lean in, but I forced myself to stay still. I'm not neglecting my responsibilities, he said. I'm rearranging them. He stopped just short of touching distance. Up close, I could see the shadows under his eyes, the strain he wasn't hiding. And yes, he continued, that includes figuring out why a woman I barely know has shaken everything I thought I understood about myself. Maybe that's the problem, I shot back. You're so busy trying to understand it that you're not actually doing anything. We agreed on 2 weeks, Dominic. But we can't figure anything out if you're hiding behind council meetings while I'm locked away like some secret you don't want to explain. His expression darkened. You're not a secret. Then what am I? I demanded. What are we doing? Because right now it feels like we're just waiting for answers to fall out of the sky while your world burns around us. Silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. Then suddenly he reached out and took my hand. The contact sent a jolt through me, sharp and electric. I sucked in a breath. Come with me, he said. Somewhere we can talk without counselors, politics, or expectations. His grip tightened slightly, his eyes almost desperate. Please, I should have asked questions, should have gone back inside, changed clothes, collected myself. Instead, I nodded. He led me through the palace quickly, using narrow servant halls and hidden staircases. He moved with easy familiarity, like someone who had memorized these paths long ago. I realized he must have used them as a boy, escaping lessons, escaping pressure, escaping the weight of a crown he never asked for. We emerged into a garden tucked away from the formal grounds. It felt wild and untouched. Old trees arched overhead, their leaves filtering sunlight into shifting patterns. A narrow stream cut through the earth, water murmuring softly over smooth stones. The air smelled of damp soil, leaves, and freedom. I used to come here when I was young, Dominic said, finally releasing my hand. I immediately felt the loss of his warmth. My mother would find me here when everything felt too heavy. She said even kings needed places where they could just exist. I sat on a flat rock near the stream, folding my nightgown around my legs. She sounds remarkable. She was. He sat beside me close enough that our shoulders nearly touched. She died when I was 16, heart failure, sudden, his voice roughened. My father followed 2 years later. Officially, it was a hunting accident, but I think he just stopped fighting. Pain cut through his words, raw and unguarded. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't be, he said quickly, but his clenched fists told the truth. She taught me that strength and vulnerability aren't opposites, that the strongest wolves are the ones who admit when they're lost. I turned toward him. Are you lost? He looked at me fully then, and the intensity in his amber eyes stole my breath. I look at you and nothing makes sense anymore, he said. My priorities shift, my temper flares. I make choices based on what brings me closer to you instead of what benefits the crown. He let out a humorless laugh. Brennan's right, I'm a disaster because of you. I didn't ask for that, I said quietly. I know. His voice softened. That's what makes it worse. You're just being you, and somehow that's enough to make me question everything I thought I wanted. The words lingered between us. I thought about Pinewood, about being invisible, about being known only as Gregory's odd daughter who preferred books to people. What did you want? I asked. Peace, he said after a moment. He picked up a smooth stone, rolling it between his fingers. A capable queen, someone political, someone steady who wouldn't need anything from me beyond the crown. He tossed the stone into the stream and watched it sink. Someone safe, he finished softly. His gaze met mine. And you're not safe, he said. You're the opposite. He stared at me, and the raw need in his eyes made heat rush over my skin. It scared me how deeply he looked at me, like I was tempting him toward thoughts he had no right to entertain. Being near him woke feelings I had buried for years, locked away out of duty and fear. And what hurt the most was not knowing if he felt anything real at all, or if I was only a problem he felt responsible for. My heart slammed against my ribs. This was the moment. I could either tell the truth or hide behind careful words again. I thought about the last 4 days. The quiet looks we pretended meant nothing, the space we kept between us, the nights I lay awake replaying that first meeting in my mind, wondering if the spark I felt had only existed in my imagination. I think about you all the time, I said finally. My voice shook, but the words were honest. I lie awake in that beautiful room and wonder if you ever think of me too, or if I'm just something you're trying to figure out. Guilt twisted inside me. I was supposed to be focused on my father, on my pack, on survival, not falling for a king who could choose anyone in the world. Falling, Dominic's voice cut through me, rough and urgent. You said falling. He stepped closer, and suddenly there was no distance left between us. His hand rose, cupping my face, his thumb brushing my cheek with a softness that nearly broke me. Don't take it back, he said quietly. Please. I couldn't have taken it back even if I wanted to. My body betrayed me, my breath shallow, my heart racing, every part of me leaning into his touch like it had been waiting for it. I'm scared, I whispered. Me too. He rested his forehead against mine, and the closeness made my eyes sting with unexpected tears. I've ruled this kingdom for 10 years, he said softly. I've handled wars, treaties, rebellions, I've made choices that shaped thousands of lives, but this? His voice faltered. I don't know how to do this, I don't know how to be what you need. Maybe you don't have to know yet, I said. I placed my hands against his chest, feeling his heart pounding hard beneath my palms. Maybe we just try together. When he kissed me, it wasn't what I'd imagined. There was no confidence, no practiced passion. It was hesitant, searching, like we were both trying to say things we didn't yet have words for. His lips were gentle, questioning, and when I sighed into the kiss, a low sound escaped him that sent warmth flooding through me. We pulled apart slowly, breathing hard, foreheads still touching, as if stepping back completely might break something delicate between us. 2 weeks won't be enough, Dominic murmured, his voice strained. No, I said, my fingers gripping his shirt. It really won't. Above us, birds sang from the trees, and the nearby stream kept flowing as if nothing had changed, completely unaware that everything had. The days that followed felt unreal, like a dream I was afraid would disappear if I looked too closely. Dominic stopped hiding. Whatever barrier he'd built around himself shattered after that morning in the garden. He walked beside me through the palace grounds, sat next to me at meals, found reasons to seek me out between meetings. The court watched in barely disguised curiosity as their calm, distant king became someone warmer, more open, almost unrecognizable, but it wasn't all stolen touches and quiet smiles. His world carried weight, and it pressed in from every side. On the 8th day, I attended my first council meeting. A chair had been added beside Dominic's at the head of the table. When I entered, the room went silent. Every eye turned toward me, measuring, judging, deciding whether I belonged. Gentlemen, Dominic said coolly, Miss Thorne will be joining us. I value her insight. Brennan looked like he'd just swallowed something sour. Your Majesty, with respect, council matters involve sensitive state issues. Perhaps Miss Thorne would be more comfortable. I'm perfectly comfortable, I said, cutting in before he could finish. My stomach twisted, but my voice stayed steady. Unless you're suggesting the Alpha King would risk security by trusting someone he shouldn't. Several counselors shifted in their seats. Under the table, Dominic found my hand and squeezed once, silent reassurance. The meeting dragged on, border tensions, resource shortages. Smaller packs complaining they were ignored in favor of powerful territories. I listened closely, hearing the resentment beneath the polite words. Then Brennan spoke again. The Pinewood Pack has requested additional support for infrastructure repairs, he said, his gaze locking onto mine. Given their limited size and lack of strategic importance, I've advised denying the request. Strategic irrelevance. Heat rushed to my face, but I didn't look away. Pinewood borders the eastern mountains, I said evenly. Those mountains are our first defense against threats from the wild territories. Calling them irrelevant is careless. With respect, Brennan said thinly, you're hardly unbiased. Neither are you, I replied, leaning forward. You've made your dislike of me clear, but facts don't change because of personal feelings. Pinewood may be small, but it protects the border. Neglecting them weakens the entire system. Silence filled the room. I felt Dominic watching me. When I finally looked at him, something bright and fierce burned in his amber eyes. Pride. Miss Thorne is correct, he said, his voice absolute. Approve the resources for Pinewood. And Counselor Brennan, in the future, leave personal bias out of your recommendations. It reflects poorly on you. The message was clear. Brennan nodded stiffly, jaw tight. I'd made an enemy, not just someone who disagreed with me, but someone who would work against me. The thought should have frightened me. Instead, I felt steady, ready, like I'd been preparing for this fight my whole life. After the meeting, Dominic pulled me into an empty corridor. His hands framed my face gently, so different from the authority he'd shown moments earlier. You were incredible, he said, all raw in his voice. I was terrified. I know, he replied softly, that's why it mattered. He kissed me slow, deep, and I melted into him like it was natural, like I belonged there. You didn't shrink, he murmured. You didn't apologize for being there, you stood your ground. He'll make things harder for me now, I said quietly. Dominic's expression hardened, his jaw setting with quiet resolve. Let him try. He forgets sometimes that I'm the one who decides who belongs here and who doesn't. And you belong here. The certainty in his voice sent a sharp rush through my chest. It felt like standing on the edge of something vast and dangerous. Do I asked quietly. If you want to, he said. His thumb brushed slowly across my lower lip, and the simple touch made me shiver. There was nothing rushed in it, only intention. Our 2 weeks are almost over, he said, his voice lower now, rougher. But I don't want you to leave, Celia, I want you to stay. Not as a guest, not as a passing distraction. His gaze held mine. I want you as mine. The possessiveness in his words should have unsettled me. Instead, it sparked something fierce and untamed inside my chest. Yours, I said softly, if you'll have me. His breath caught. When he spoke again, the king faded and the man stood bare before me. I know I'm difficult, he said. I know this world is harsh and full of sharp edges. You'll be challenged every day. You'll face resistance in rooms where power decides who matters. His eyes searched mine. But I swear to you I will fight for you, in council halls, in grand gatherings, and anywhere someone tries to make you feel small. I thought of Pinewood, of my father's kind eyes, of the small house that had been my entire world. I thought of the girl I used to be, quiet, overlooked, convinced she would never matter beyond being Gregory's strange daughter from a forgotten border pack. And then I thought of who I was now, someone who could stand beside a king and not feel like a fraud. I need to speak to my father first, I said. He deserves to hear this from me, not from messengers or sealed letters. Dominic nodded without hesitation. Of course you'll travel to Pinewood tomorrow. Jackson will, alone, I said gently but firmly. I need to do this myself. He hesitated, and I saw the struggle written across his face. The ruler weighing risk against reason, the wolf wanting to keep me close, guarded, safe. Finally he nodded. Alone, but you come back to me. I will, I said. I sealed the promise with a kiss that tasted like hope, like future, like a dream I'd never dared to claim before. The journey to Pinewood took most of the following day. I watched the land shift beyond the carriage window, smooth royal roads fading into rough paths, polished stone giving way to forest and rock. By the time we arrived, the sky was painted in deep purples and soft golds. My father was in the garden, bent over the soil that had fed us through hard winters and lean years. When he heard the carriage, he straightened, and his smile hit me like a blow to the chest. Celia, he said, pulling me into his arms. He smelled like earth and safety and home. I thought you'd forgotten your old father, he teased. Never, I said, holding him tightly. Can we talk? We sat on the porch as night settled in, shadows stretching across the yard. I told him everything, Dominic, the tension, the impossible pull between us, the council meetings, Brennan's hostility, the choice standing in front of me like a cliff edge. He listened quietly, saying nothing until I finished. You love him, he said at last. It wasn't a question. I think I do, I admitted. The words felt enormous, frightening. Is that crazy? It's been less than 2 weeks. He smiled softly, sadness threading through it. Your mother and I knew after 3 days. I blinked. You did? Sometimes souls recognize each other quickly, he said. The real question isn't love, it's whether you're ready for what loving him will demand. What do you mean? You'll be queen, he said gently, not just his partner, a leader. You'll face wolves who think you don't belong, who will test you, judge you, wait for you to fail. Every mistake will be remembered, every weakness used. He took my hand, but if you love him truly, you'll find the strength to carry that weight. Just like your mother did, I stared at him. She left her pack for you. She was promised to another, he said quietly. A powerful match, safe, advantageous, but she chose me instead. His eyes drifted with memory. They turned their backs on her. She never once regretted it. She told me choosing love over safety was the bravest thing she ever did. Tears blurred my vision. I miss her. So do I, he whispered, pulling me close. Every day, for a moment, I let myself be his little girl again. I see her in you, he said. That same fire, that same courage. If this king makes you feel like who you're meant to be, don't let fear stop you. Don't let narrow minds make you doubt your worth. We sat in silence as stars appeared one by one. The pack needs support, I said eventually. If I stay with Dominic, I'll make sure Pinewood isn't forgotten. We'll survive either way, he said, though relief colored his voice. Just promise me you're choosing him because you want him, not because of duty. I promise. And it was true. I stayed the night in my old room, surrounded by memories and the quiet ghosts of who I used to be. When morning came, I felt ready, terrified, yes, but ready. My father stood on the porch as I prepared to leave. His eyes shone with tears. Make me proud, he said. I will. I love you, Papa. I love you too. Now go. Your king is probably wearing a hole in the palace floors. I laughed, carrying that warmth with me as the carriage rolled away. I watched Pinewood fade behind the trees and felt no regret, only anticipation. The palace rose ahead as the sun dipped low, solid and unyielding. The carriage barely stopped before the door flew open. Dominic was there, pulling me into his arms with a fierceness that stole my breath. You came back, he breathed against my hair, and in that moment I knew I was exactly where I belonged. I promise, I whispered. I pulled back just enough to look at him, to take in the way relief and joy softened his sharp features, turning him into something achingly beautiful. The kind of beauty that comes from being truly seen, and I had never broken a promise in my life. Stay, he said quietly. His hands cradled my face, his thumb brushing away a tear I hadn't felt fall. Not for weeks, he continued. Not for months, stay forever. Be my queen, Celia. Stand beside me, fight with me. Help me build something neither of us could ever create alone. My thoughts spun through everything that had shaped me, my mother's quiet bravery, my father's steady wisdom, the girl who once pressed herself against walls hoping not to be noticed, and the woman who had learned to stand her ground without flinching. I thought about council chambers filled with sharp voices, about enemies waiting for weakness, about a future full of trials, and beneath all of it I thought about amber eyes, the scent of cedar and forest, and a bond that had rewritten every rule I thought I lived by. Yes, I said, the word felt like a door opening. Yes, I'll be your queen. The kiss that followed tasted like certainty and promise, like a future claimed without fear. It wasn't born of reason or careful planning, it was something deeper, something written into the soul. Somewhere in the palace, I knew Brennan and others like him were already planning their resistance. Let them. I'd spent my whole life being overlooked, underestimated, treated as insignificant. That time was over. The announcement came 3 days later. I stood beside Dominic on the grand balcony overlooking the main courtyard. Below us, hundreds of wolves gathered, their bodies packed close, their faces lifted toward the sun and stone and power above them. Heat shimmered in the air and anticipation rippled through the crowd like a living pulse. Dominic's hand slipped into mine, solid and grounding. Ready? He murmured. No, I admitted, but I'm not running. A quick smile touched his lips just for me, then he stepped forward, the king settling into his bones. For 10 years, he said, his voice carrying easily across the courtyard, I have ruled alone. I have defended our lands, negotiated alliances, and made choices that shaped this kingdom without a queen at my side. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Many of you have questioned that choice. Many have wondered when I would take a mate. The whispers grew louder. I waited, he continued, because I refused to trade love for politics. I waited because the one who stands beside me must do so out of loyalty and truth, not ambition. He turned toward me. I waited for her. He drew me forward into full view. The weight of hundreds of gazes hit me all at once. Curiosity, doubt, calculation. My wolf stirred under my skin, torn between the instinct to bow and the fierce pride of standing tall. Celia Thorne of the Pinewood Pack will be my queen, Dominic declared. His voice rang with finality. She is strong where others bend, thoughtful where others rush. She has challenged me, supported me, and shown me what true partnership means. Any who question her worth will answer to me. The warning in his tone was unmistakable. For a heartbeat, the courtyard was silent. Then a howl rose from the crowd. Another followed, then another. Within seconds, the air filled with sound, deep, powerful, vibrating through my chest and bones. Acceptance, approval, belonging. Tears burned my eyes. Not everyone joined. I saw small clusters of stillness, tight faces, cold stares. Brennan stood among them, his expression carefully controlled, resentment leaking through the cracks, but they were few. Dominic pulled me close and kissed my temple, and the crowd erupted again. "Welcome home, my queen," he whispered. The weeks that followed tested me in ways I hadn't expected. I studied relentlessly, pack law, territory management, alliances that stretched back generations. Dominic pushed me hard, never letting me settle for surface answers, forcing me to form my own judgments. The council chamber became my proving ground. Brennan didn't stop trying to undermine me. He questioned my experience, dismissed my ideas, suggested my time might be better spent on softer responsibilities. I learned to answer him with preparation and precision. "The Morrison border conflict isn't about land," I said during one heated meeting, spreading maps across the table. "It's about water." Several councilors leaned in. "The river has been shifting south due to upstream erosion. Both packs are fighting for access, not territory." Davies, an elder councilor who had once doubted me, studied the markings closely. "Then redrawing borders won't solve it." "Exactly," I said. "Stabilize the banks here, here, and here. The river corrects itself, both packs get water, no bloodshed." Dominic's approval warmed my spine. "Do it," he ordered, "before winter." Brennan had no argument. It was a small win, but I learned to treasure them. Not every challenge came from council rooms. 3 months after the announcement, we hosted a gathering of neighboring packs, a night meant to show unity and strength. I had planned every detail carefully, balancing tradition with welcome. The evening flowed smoothly until Lyanna Frost arrived. She was everything I was. And the moment she stepped into the hall, I felt the shift in the air, the tension tightening, the danger whispering that this next battle would not be fought with maps or logic, but with pride, power, and claws hidden behind smiles. She was tall and graceful, her dark hair falling in smooth waves down her back, her pale eyes sharp and cold like frozen glass. Before I ever stepped into this world, she had been the favorite to become queen. Now that place was mine, and her anger showed in every stiff movement she made. "Your Majesty," she said to Dominic, smiling in a way that felt more like a challenge than kindness. "How wonderful to see you again. It's been far too long, Lyanna." Dominic inclined his head, his voice calm but distant. "It has. Allow me to introduce my queen, Celia." Her icy gaze slid to me, slow and judging, weighing me in a single glance. "So you're Celia Thorne," she said smoothly. "I've heard quite a bit about you." "All good things, I hope," I replied, keeping my posture steady. "Oh, of course," she said sweetly. "Though I must admit I was surprised by where you come from. Pinewood is such a small pack. I never imagined the Alpha King would choose someone so inexperienced." The insult was wrapped in politeness, sharp enough to sting once it landed. Around us, nearby conversations faded. I could feel other wolves listening, their attention tightening like a held breath. "Experience doesn't come from one place," I said evenly. "I didn't grow up surrounded by court games, but I know what it means to survive. I know how to make hard choices when there's little to work with and how to value what truly matters instead of what looks impressive. Those lessons matter here." "How charming," Lyanna replied, her smile thinning. "But being queen isn't about surviving in the wild. It's about influence, alliances, and respect. Things that take years, sometimes generations, to earn. Standing beside the king isn't enough." "You're right," I said, and her eyes flickered in surprise. "It does take those things. It also takes the willingness to learn, to adapt, and to put the kingdom above personal ambition. I may still be learning, but I'm here because the king chose me, not because I spent years plotting and hoping to be chosen." The words landed hard, her pleasant mask cracked, venom flashing across her face as she drew breath to respond. "Enough." Dominic's voice cut through the tension like ice breaking. The air seemed to freeze around us. "You have said more than enough," he continued coldly. "In fact, I believe the Frost Pack's presence at future gatherings should be reconsidered. We do not tolerate disrespect toward our queen." Lyanna went pale, realization hitting her all at once. "Your Majesty, I apologize," she said quickly. "I meant no offense." "And yet you gave it," Dominic replied. He stepped slightly in front of me, his body a silent shield. The gesture was protective, possessive, and deeply reassuring. "My queen's origins are none of your concern. Her worth was decided the moment I chose her." "Anyone who questions that is questioning me. Is that clear?" "Perfectly clear, Your Majesty," Lyanna said stiffly, bowing low. She withdrew in humiliation, disappearing into the crowd. I watched her go, my chest tight with a strange mix of victory and weariness. "I could have handled that," I murmured once we had a moment alone. "I know you could," Dominic said softly. His hand rested at my lower back, warm and grounding. "But you don't have to face everything alone. That's what being partners means. We stand together." Something inside me settled at his words. For so long, I'd been proving myself, pushing, surviving. I'd nearly forgotten that I wasn't meant to carry everything by myself. 6 months into my reign, winter arrived without mercy. Snow swallowed the palace grounds and the cold cut deep even through thick wolf fur. That was when the real trial began. Reports came in from the Eastern Territories, wolves disappearing, not killed, not injured, simply gone, their presence fading as if they had never existed. No blood, no bodies. Only empty homes and broken families. Fear spread fast, border packs demanded protection, supplies, answers. The council chamber filled with raised voices and desperate theories, rogue wolves, illness, dark forces no one wanted to name. Brennan, as expected, suggested pulling our forces back to protect the central packs. That would be a death sentence, I said sharply. Those wolves are ours, we don't abandon them. With respect, Your Majesty, Brennan replied, we don't have endless resources. If we stretch too far, we risk everyone. Then we stop guessing, I said, standing and moving toward the map on the wall. And we start thinking. I pointed to the markings I'd made. The disappearances follow a path. They begin deep in the mountain passes, then move south, first isolated homes, then larger settlements. Davies leaned closer, his brow furrowing. You're right, that's deliberate. It's not random, I said, and it's not sickness. Something is hunting us, something smart enough to plan and hide. Dominic's expression darkened. You believe this is organized. I believe we've been reacting instead of preparing, I said, turning to face them all. We know where this leads, so we fortify the next target, we set a trap, we place our strongest wolves there and force whatever this is to reveal itself. Brennan opened his mouth, but Dominic stopped him with a raised hand. The Queen's plan stands, Dominic said firmly. Davies, coordinate with the border packs. Brennan, gather our best fighters and trackers. This ends before more wolves vanish. It took 2 weeks to prepare. I refused to stay behind. Dominic and I argued for hours, his fear clashing with his respect for me. I need to be there, I said finally, exhaustion heavy in my bones. Not to prove anything, but because they're my people. I can't ask them to face danger while I hide behind walls. He searched my face for a long moment, worry and pride warring in his eyes. If anything happens to you, he said quietly, I'll make sure whoever's responsible regrets it for the rest of their very short life. I believed him, and for the first time since winter began, I felt ready for whatever waited for us in the dark. I held his face between my hands, forcing him to look at me. His eyes were dark with worry, raw and unguarded. I know you're afraid, I whispered. I am too, but fear can't lead us. Trust me to think clearly, to move carefully, and to come back to you. That night, he wrapped himself around me as if he could shield me from the world by sheer will. I memorized everything, the weight of his arms, the steady rhythm of his heart, the familiar scent of cedar and rain that had come to mean safety. I didn't sleep much. I just listened to him breathe and held on to the quiet, knowing dawn would bring danger. The trap was triggered beneath a full moon, bright enough to turn the snow into glittering glass. We were spread out around a small border settlement, one that fit the pattern too perfectly to ignore. The cold sank into my bones as we waited, time stretched thin, wind whispered through bare trees, every sound felt too loud, every second heavy with tension, then they appeared. They weren't wolves, they weren't anything that belonged to this world. Shapes slid out of the darkness like living smoke, bodies bending and shifting in ways that made my skin crawl. Their eyes burned an unnatural green and they moved without sound, flowing toward the homes as if they expected no resistance. Easy prey, they were wrong. The fight exploded all at once, fast, savage, unforgiving. Steel flashed, wolves shifted. Snow churned red beneath our feet. The creatures were powerful, but they weren't prepared for us moving as one. We flanked, trapped, struck together. Training, trust, instinct, all of it came together in that violent chaos. Some of the creatures were destroyed. Others were restrained, shrieking as dawn crept closer. When it was over, the sky was painted in soft pink and gold. I stood among my people, shaking with exhaustion, blood staining my clothes, my lungs burning, but alive, victorious. Dominic reached me then. He didn't speak at first. He just pulled me into his arms with a force that told me how close he'd come to breaking. Don't ever do that to me again, he growled into my hair, his voice rough with fear. I let out a tired breath, holding him just as tightly. No promises. But I clung to him, grateful beyond words. To be breathing, to be held, to have survived another night in this life that had given me love where I never expected it. Spring followed, slow but steady. The captured creatures revealed the truth, a hidden group working to tear the kingdom apart from its weakest edges. A careful, cruel plan that failed because we faced it together, because we acted instead of hiding, because I refused to let fear decide for me. After that night, the council looked at me differently. Their doubts softened. Their respect grew. Even Brennan, stubborn as stone, no longer questioned my decisions outright. I hadn't earned my place through bloodlines or clever words, but through action, courage, and clear judgment. More importantly, I had proven it to myself. A year after that first gathering, Dominic and I stood again on the balcony above the courtyard. This time, we weren't announcing a future, we were celebrating it. The crowd below was larger, stronger, filled with wolves from packs that once stood apart. Now they stood together. Do you ever regret it? Dominic asked quietly, his arm secure around my waist. Leaving your quiet life for all this madness? I thought of Pinewood, of the girl I used to be, hoping to disappear into the background. I thought of battles, hard choices, friendships forged in fire. I thought of my father's letter that morning, his pride, his love, his joy at how Pinewood now thrived with the support we'd given. Not even for a second, I said softly. This is where I'm meant to be. He kissed me then, gentle, warm, full of promise. Below us, the wolves lifted their voices in a powerful howl that rolled across the land like a vow of unity. I had arrived as no one from nowhere, expecting nothing. I had found love, purpose, and a strength I never knew lived inside me. I had become a queen, not because I was born to it, but because I chose it and because he chose me. As the sun sank low, setting the sky ablaze with fire and gold, I knew this was only the beginning. There would be more danger, more fear, more trials that tested everything I was. But there would also be love, partnership, and belonging. The invisible girl had stepped into the light, and she was never fading back into the shadows again.